6 years ago, an unworthy man who had cast a dark shadow across this land was made President of these United States. This momentous event came not as a result of the popular vote, but by proclamation of the Supreme Court. It extinguished the light of hope in millions of Americans that lifetime appointees would not act like political cronies. It brought the sad realization that democracy, as they had known it, might be coming to an end. And 6 years later, Americans are less free. 6 years later, the life of the American is sadly crippled by the manacles of warrantless searches and the chains of foreign entanglements. 6 years later, America is a lonely island of false tranquility in the midst of a vast ocean of hostility and terror. 6 years later, victims of Katrina still languish in poverty and find themselves exiles in their own land. And so I speak today to dramatize this shameful condition. In a sense, I speak to demand payment on a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all persons, yes, the old and the young, the sick as well as the healthy, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as human rights are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given its people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so I speak to demand payment on this check, a check that will give us the riches of freedom and the security of justice. I speak to remind you of the fierce urgency of the now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of waiting or taking the tranquilizing drug of hoping. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of Bush's policies to the sunlit path of justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of the lobbyists to the solid rock of equality. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of America's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This defining moment of America's discontent will not pass until there is a reinvigoration of freedom and equality. 2007 is not the end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Democrats only need to blow off steam and will then be content must have a rude awakening. And there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until all Americans have basic human rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my fellow Democrats who have been elected into the halls of leadership. In the process of regaining your rightful place, you must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Do not seek to satisfy your thirst for power by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative campaigns to degenerate into incivility. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting insults with cool logic. A marvelous new militancy has engulfed the Democratic community, but it must not lead us to a distrust of all Republicans. For many of our Republican citizens have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny, and they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of human rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as Americans are the victims of the unspeakable horrors of wrongful detentions and warrantless searches. We can never be satisfied as long as our soldiers are maimed and killed in unnecessary and foolish conflicts like the one in Iraq. We can never be satisfied as long as older Americans have half-baked Medicare when every American, old and young alike, should have dependable health care. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you who are listening have suffered from great trials and tribulations. Some of you have helped victims of Katrina, and some of you are victims of Katrina, battered by the storm of a hurricane, and then staggered by the winds of Bush's incompetence and indifference. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the precincts of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair, I say to you today, my friends. And so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. I have a dream that one day even the White House, a place sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that politicians will one day live in a nation where they are elected, not because they curry favor with some, but because they work for all. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every foreign entanglement will be ended and every soldier brought home. Dependence on oil will be over, and no one will die digging coal. This is my hope, and this is the faith that I go on with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood and sisterhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to play together, knowing that we will be free again one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of us will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the town hall meetings of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the tarnished tip of New York City. Let freedom ring from the caucuses of Iowa. But not only that, let freedom ring from Crawford, Texas. Let freedom ring from New Orleans, Louisiana. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of this land. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of us, black and white, men and women, Jews, Gentiles, and Muslims, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.